Good morning. Welcome to Pastor John's Fireside Chat. It's Friday, May 14th. I hope that you're doing well. We've been focusing on Psalm 23 for our daily devotionals for the last week and a half. And today we come to verse 4 of Psalm 23. And it really is one of the more familiar verses of this chapter. Starting at verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And then verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It's because of that statement in verse 4 of Psalm 23 that you will often hear Psalm 23 read at funerals. We have comfort because we have a shepherd who is with us, a shepherd who is actually greater than death itself. He is with us and he walks with us through the valley of the shadow of death. And that's not just a metaphor. When David wrote these words, and still today, there is a literal valley of the shadow of death in the Holy Land. Quoting from Kenneth Bailey, he writes these following words. Dr. George Lamsa grew up in a community of semi-nomadic sheep herders in Syria. And he writes, valleys of the shadow of death are paths which wind in between mountains where there are dark shadows and deep gorges. Travelers march slowly and silently in order to avoid being seen or heard by bandits. The fear of death is constantly in their minds. They tremble. They expect trouble or death at any time when they are passing through. Bailey goes on to say that the valley of the shadow of death cannot be avoided. There's no bypass. There's no magical escape. There's only a way through. And notice how the psalmist puts it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Death is not the end point. The psalmist doesn't write, well, we have to go through this valley and then that's all there is because you're dead and there's no more left to your story. That's not what he says. Death is a door that we will all walk through unless Jesus Christ returns first. But it is a door we walk through because of the one who has conquered death for us, our good shepherd, Jesus Christ. And the psalmist says, I can walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and I don't have to be terrified because you are with me. And your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The shepherd often had two weapons, I guess you could say, in his arsenal. One was the rod, which was almost like a mace. It was a piece of wood, and oftentimes it had iron in the end of it, and it was to ward off the wolves, ward off the lions, ward off the predators, beat them back to protect the sheep. But the second thing that was in his arsenal was the shepherd's staff, the rod and staff that the shepherd used to protect the sheep, but also to gently guide them into the way that they needed to go. Jesus Christ, through the cross, has conquered our greatest enemy. We will all die, but we will be passing through death because it is a conquered enemy, defeated by Jesus Christ. And even as he used the weapon of the cross to defeat death, he continues to use his shepherd's staff to gently guide us into that future that he has prepared for us. I hope that you know that you have a God, you have a good shepherd who is there for you, even in the face of death. And because of that, you don't have to be afraid. Death is not the end of the story for the child of God. life is, because of our good shepherd who laid down his life so that his sheep, you and I, might live forever as his forgiven people. Have a great day in the Lord.